UFC Vegas 90 just recently wrapped up, and I'm going to recap the entire card. Also, a big thank you to everybody supporting. Hit 30,000 subscribers on the Fight Companion. Feeling fantastic about it. So much love to each and every one of you guys. Make sure you all smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And let's start it off with the first fight. Ladies went after it. Nora Cornolle versus Melissa Tonya Mullins. Cornolle ends up getting a stoppage in the second round with some knees to the body. Melissa Mullins kind of got exposed here. She's got okay pressure grappling, but Cornolle's Muay Thai was a big difference maker. She's good and close. You know what's crazy is Melissa Mullins was ranked 15 in the world at women's bantamweight, and she only had one UFC fight. I'm shocked, man. The bantamweight division right now is the least stacked division in MMA, period. We really need to stack up this damn bantamweight division. The greatness of women's fights started with Rousey in this division, and now, years and years later, I think it's worse than it's ever been. So hopefully some new savage on the come-up comes through. Cornolle, she's 34. She's not making a run for the belt. She's got a fun style. She's got decent Muay Thai. She's not a lay and pray type fighter, whereas Mullins was trying to employ that lay and pray. So good work by Nora Cornolle. Let's keep running up the card. Next fight on the card, César Almeida versus Budka. Budka just tried to wrestle the whole time. The lay and pray, the most boring style, really. He just tried to get it to the floor, and he was able to get it to the floor a bit, but he was doing zero damage, and that's not how you win fights. In the second round, he got completely gassed, and then Budka started absolutely teeing off on him, and Budka, or did I say Budka? Almeida started teeing off on Budka. Let me re-say it. And then Budka fell over. He got finished off. César Almeida comes from the kickboxing base. He fought Alex Pereira 3 times, even beat him once. And he definitely has dangerous stand-up, and his get-ups are really good. I got to give credit. Now, granted, Budka, 24, hasn't really shown a high pedigree. We don't even know the level. I'd say it's not that top caliber at this point. But César Almeida did get a big win, and immediately after the fight, he decided to call out the big guns. He called out Chris Weidman after the fight. I'm down for a César Almeida-Chris Weidman fight. How will Almeida do with Weidman, whose wrestling pedigree far greater than Budka's, former world champ? I know César Almeida doesn't have that much hype on him right now, but he did fight Pereira and beat him once. Maybe the Chris Weidman fight does happen. I don't think that's that crazy and far-fetched, especially after Weidman's eye poke palooza last weekend. César Almeida, good W. And good UFC debut. Next fight on the card, Gene Matsumoto versus Dan Argueta. Matsumoto caught him in that guillotine with a second left. Dan Argueta was doing great. He was putting crazy pressure on Matsumoto. Now, Matsumoto was definitely fighting back, but he was tested because Argueta's wrestling offense was crazy. The dude just kept shooting. They'd scramble, he'd be on another shot. Both guys, though, really were able to excel at a high pace. And then Matsumoto with the guillotine, a second left, Argueta taps, and he was actually pretty much out cold. You can see in his eyes, he was not there mentally at all. His brain was shut off for a moment. Matsumoto taps him with a second left in the second round. Can you imagine? Argueta eats a second later, he might win that fight. It might go 3, he might win a decision. Instead, Matsumoto gets a key submission, which was a major victory in his career. At 24, he looks pretty schooled. A hard fight with Argueta wasn't really surprising. We knew Argueta was going to push the pace like that. Matsumoto passed the first test. I don't know how far up the ranks you can jump him. At 24, I think slow and steady wins the race. But no matter what, I got to say, respectable win and a really nice submission here. Really nice submission. It was impressive. Matsumoto solid. Very well-rounded fighter and was able to keep a high pace. Next fight, we had Victor Hugo and Pedro Falcao. First round was all Falcao, but then the pressure from Hugo started. You know, Falcao also took it on real short notice. And I feel like you could start to tell after the first. Deserving win for Hugo. He had good striking moments. But Falcao's tough. Falcao's going to be a tough customer for some of these back-end bantamweights inside of the UFC. Because he does have good pressure. I mean, you could do a Falcao-Dan Argueta fight after this one, in all honesty. It would be a hard matchup for sure. Both grapplers. I'd actually like to see it. For Hugo, I don't know how far up the ranks you can really jump him. He looked good, though. He's athletic. His striking is solid enough. I'd say it's good. His grappling skill set is good. I don't know. He's a weird one. How good is Falcao? We don't know. It was a weird measuring stick for Hugo's debut against a short notice Falcao. In the battle of mustaches, Hugo won the fight, but Pedro Falcao had the stash of the week for sure. The dude had a mustache from the heavens. Hugo, though, deserving win in his UFC debut against a really tough short notice replacement. Next fight on the card, Norma Dumont and Germaine de Randamie. This one was a snoozer. De Randamie's striking was looking solid, but she couldn't get up from the ground. And then late in the fight, Dumont secured the win with top control. She didn't do much damage from top. She held the position. I was bitching hard on the live stream about it, but in all honesty, it's exactly what Norma Dumont had to do to beat de Randamie. You're not going to go out there and out-kickbox de Randamie. I mean, even Amanda Nunes was spamming takedowns on de Randamie because the striking is extremely difficult to deal with. De Randamie's kickboxing is high pedigreed, and even at 40, I don't think she looked bad. She had the same weakness as always. If she gets stuck on her back, she can get controlled. For Dumont, this was her first time at 135 in the UFC. It was a signature win against a former world champion at 145, rather, but still world champion. And a de Randamie, whose last fight was a win over Juliana Pena, even though it was over 3 years ago. She has a win over the current champ, Pennington. For Norma Dumont, she put herself in the title picture with this victory. I mean, you definitely got to jump her up in the ranks pretty seriously after beating de Randamie. And I think she's 100% in the mix. I mean, a fight against some of the top girls in the world, like, name's not jumping at me right now. Aldana, maybe? That's not a crazy fight. Her and Irene Aldana would be interesting. That might be the next matchup for Norma Dumont after this one. For de Randamie, I don't think you need to retire. I still think she's got some fight in her, and there could be some intriguing matchups. I don't know at 40 what she's going to want to do, but I'll expect her to come back once again. I mean, she didn't look awful. The striking looked good. Norma Dumont's grappling pressure won of the fight. Key moments. De Randamie ended up on the floor with her own kicks at some points, and that's why Dumont was able to get a W, and then the late takedown secure a win. Good win for Dumont. Biggest win of her career. Next fight on the card, we had Łukasz Brzeski versus Valter Walker. This was terrible. It was terrible. Valter Walker, I thought, won the decision at the end, 29-28. They gave it to Brzeski. They wrote the wrong for Brzeski after he got robbed against Boudet in his debut. He now gets a robbery over Valter Walker. But boring fight. Valter Walker's striking is non-existent. He gassed as well, and he's able to time takedowns pretty well, but he doesn't do much damage from top. He kind of just controls position. At 26, I feel like he's a little too young for the UFC, especially, you know, at heavyweight. 26 is like 18 at heavyweight. He's way too young. Brzeski stays on. He's going to keep fighting in the UFC. He gets a controversial win, but a win nonetheless. Damn, the Valter Walker hype train, whatever was of it, it ain't there. He ain't that good. He's got decent takedowns, limited stand-up, minimal grappling, good control, but not much damage from top. Valter Walker wasn't impressive in the slightest, and that's just an honest fact. He'd get on top and not really know what to do with it. Brzeski was the better boxer of the two. He landed some good shots on the feet. Controversial decision or not, he did outstrike Valter Walker, so that's a fair point. But yeah, I thought it should have went Walker's way, but definitely when you have a snoozer like that, you can't really bitch at the end when it doesn't go your way, especially when you're just controlling from top position. And we know the judges, they be scoring fights on damage. Next fight, Alex Morono, Court McGee. This was way too close for comfort. I said Court McGee was the lock of the card. I said Alex Morono was the lock of the card, and it was. He came through, he won. But he had a really hard fight against a 39-year-old Court McGee. In the first round, Morono's striking was on point. Then in the second round, he almost fumbled the bag. He ends up pulling guard for a guillotine. Then McGee beat him up from top position. He failed on an armbar attempt. And he ended up definitely losing that second round. Third round, Morono edged him by a bit. He was clearly the faster striker, clearly had more power, was just more precise on the feet, and we knew that was a big advantage coming in. I called him the lock. I thought he would get a knockout, though. But McGee, his chin held up. I don't think McGee's chin is as gone as maybe we anticipated. Morono hit him with some decent right hands, awkward right hands for sure, but nothing put Court McGee down. He was maybe staggered a little bit, but not even that rocked for the most part. Morono gets a tricky win. Hard fight for him here against Court McGee. He was definitely pushed to the breaking point, but regardless of that, a win nonetheless for Alex Morono, who does have good jiu-jitsu from bottom, but you're not going to be tapping Court McGee from bottom very often. Let's jump to the main card opener. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash the likes. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. It was Charlie Campbell versus Trevor Peek, and what was a nice scrap. These guys put it on the line. They gave it hell. Campbell deserved the win at the end. He did more damage striking. He secured positions in the grappling. Trevor Peek swang and bang, though. He tried his absolute hardest, but at the end, Campbell ended up on top. And he was landing good low kicks, too, is Campbell. Good jabs and straights. He caught Peek with some big ones. But Peek had moments where he landed big punches and then forced Charlie Campbell to engage in grappling. And Campbell was just a better technical fighter. Peek, an absolute junkyard dog. He's training with Dwayne Ludwig now. I see improvements in Trevor Peek, and I think he's going to get better and better. But still raw, man. He's 29, so how raw can you be? But he's still a raw fighter. Tough as fuck, though. Charlie Campbell got a clean, unanimous decision. The right guy definitely won, and he gave Trevor Peek a difficult fight. He was a hard matchup. He was just significantly better, and he had that dog in him too, and it showed. 30-27, clean win for Campbell. Good way to open off the main card, man. It was a high-confidence pick for me as well, so I felt pretty damn good about this one. After the fight, Campbell said he's the best in the world. I think he's got a ways to go, but I like where his head's at, man. He trains with Morab and Aljo. He's got to have that confidence. Next fight was Ignacio Bahamondes versus Christos Giagos. Ignacio got a first-round head kick knockout. He was out-striking Giagos. Bahamondes' striking's dangerous, man. He's long as hell. For Giagos, I mean, he was taking on a horrible stylistic matchup. We saw it against Zellhuber last time, and now we saw it with Bahamondes. Bahamondes ends up getting a first-round knockout. His kicks were deadly. He threw some spins out there, too. Bahamondes is blossoming. He's only 26, so he has a fuckload of time to grow in the sport. His stand-up is really good, and his length makes it tricky to even get him to the floor. If he can stay upright and strike with a lot of these lightweights, he's going to be hell to deal with for a vast majority of them. And at only 26, I do think the future is bright for Bahamondes. Immediately after the fight, he said he wants to fight at the Sphere for that Mexican Independence Day event. I'm all in for that. Give him a fight. I don't know the opponent. Somebody for Ignacio Bahamondes. There's always somebody. I don't know the exact name of who it would be, but Bahamondes' striking's game as hell, and he's really blossoming into a pretty solid young prospect here in the lightweight division. When you're 6'3", at lightweight, you're going to give a lot of people problems. And he knocked Giagos out with a high kick. For Giagos, 34, 2 finish losses in a row. I don't think he gets cut from the UFC because of this one, but maybe a step down in competition or used again, unfortunately, as a stepping stone. Good win for Bahamondes. Was another high-confidence call. I sweep the most confidence picks here. Next fight, Chepe Mariscal versus Morgan Charriere. These two throw down, and they brought the heat. It was actually fight of the night. It was a split decision win for Chepe, and that is because he's an absolute dog. First round was a toss-up. Could have been scored either way. Second round was all Charriere, and I thought third round was Mariscal, who brought the absolute heat late and ended up on top at the end of the fight, and not just sitting on top, but throwing strikes. Charriere's stand-up is very smooth. He's the better striker from long range than Chepe, but Chepe kept closing that gap on him. He threw some big shots, especially in that third round, and landed. Even when he was getting dominated in the second, Mariscal landed a late front kick to the face, and then Charriere absolutely slammed him. Chepe looked like an absolute game dog, though. Split decision. I thought it could have went either way. I guess technically speaking, I scored it for Charriere, 29-28, but I said the first round is anybody's. It was 50-50. There's no argument really on either side. Charriere, tough as hell. I thought he was looking great heading into the third round, but then the tide turned, and Mariscal finished extremely strong, and that's what needed to be done. Good W for Chepe. And good underdog call, baby. I had Chepe. We'll talk the picks review at the end. But good featured bout, definitely deserving of fight of the night, I'd say. Maybe, though. I don't know. The main event was solid, too. We'll talk about the main event in a moment. Nonetheless, Chepe Mariscal, 3-0 in the UFC. Every time he's an underdog, and every time he's won. So put some respect on Chepe's name. He's an absolute junkyard dog. Co-main event, Damon Jackson versus Alexander Hernandez. I was actually confused at the split decision. Brian Miner scored the fight 30-27 for Alexander Hernandez. I think that's a delusional scorecard. I don't know why. I don't know how. I think he should say something about that. I'm confused. I'm very confused. Like, what? 30-27 Hernandez. I thought Damon Jackson definitely won at the end. He put a pace on Hernandez. He busted him up. He out-wrestled him. He out-dogged him. Hernandez was on his back a good amount. It was competitive. It was 3 competitive rounds. but Damon Jackson definitely deserved the win. Now, Hernandez did rock Damon Jackson early in round number 3 and was on top in mount, and then Damon Jackson somehow gets on top, gets in mount, gets the back. I thought Jackson edged him by a tad. In an absolute war, I thought Damon Jackson pulled it off, and the right guy was definitely the winner of this fight here. For Hernandez, man, that win over Beneil Dariush, the commentary was saying was almost a curse because he got forced up the ranks too fast. And looking at him now, you're 100% right. The commentary's right. He beat Beneil early on, and then he started having trouble because he had to take on savage after savage. And at 31, I feel like Hernandez is like an older fighter. He's been in a lot of wars. He's taken some losses, man. He's not been looking great. A win over Jim Miller recently aged really well because Jim's been doing amazing. I think Hernandez also needs to go back up to 55. He weighed 150. He missed weight substantially here. Thankfully, Damon Jackson outdogged and was able to win. Because, damn, that would have been fucked for him. Jackson looks like he dies on the scale, but he makes 145. Hernandez coming in didn't look as shrunken down and sucked out as Damon Jackson, but he missed weight. A legit weight miss. Not a good look to go out there and miss weight. Not at all. Damon Jackson, scrappy veteran, gave Hernandez trouble, and he pulled it off. He deserved the win at the end of it, man. Good win for Damon. Main event of the evening. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash the likes. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. This is the one we all been waiting for. Was it a robbery? No. Close fight that could have gone either way, but I personally can't say I thought it was a robbery. The first round was Brendan Allen's. The second round was Chris Curtis's. The third round, I scored for Chris Curtis, but Brendan Allen finished very strong. Fourth round, towards Brendan Allen. Fifth round, close as fuck. But Brendan Allen finished really strong. Granted, he was falling to his back a bit. I didn't like that. Body language wasn't great. Maybe if Chris Curtis' hamstring wouldn't have blown out at the end, he would have finished strong and got the win. But Allen finished the fight on the offensive. And I think that's why they scored it for him. Allen was very successful landing takedowns and controlling the back of Chris Curtis, but obviously not successful in finishing him because Chris Curtis doesn't have a neck. He's unable to be strangled. Chris Curtis's boxing looked solid in this fight. He was so close. I really thought it could have gone either way, but I called at the end. I think they're going to give it to Brendan Allen by a split decision. I personally disagree with 49-46. I think 48-47 is fair. I think 48-47 either way is fair. When you leave it to the judges, it can go either way. It finishes tit for tat. But the body language of Chris Curtis, to me, looked like he couldn't have gone to round 6, whereas Brendan Allen could have. And I think maybe that's why the judges scored that 5th round for him. And what was competitive, they gave it to Allen. Allen was shooting a lot of takedowns, Curtis defending, right? But not doing damage as he defends. Just wants to get into a boxing match. And he was doing well with the boxing, but never really rocking Allen. The big knee that Paul Felder called, it was not landed. It did not hit Brendan Allen. It hit him in the chest or the armpit, and then he was in on a takedown. Chris Curtis had great striking moments, and he buckled Brendan Allen. He hurt him bad in the third. He, I think, rocked him a little bit later in the fight, or at least he touched him clean, but never to the point where it looked like Brendan Allen was going unconscious. Besides, I guess, the one moment in the third where Brendan Allen was substantially rocked, then he was able to take Chris Curtis's back standing and finish the round on his back and maybe steal the round. So I see why the scorecards are very close. I really wasn't surprised by a Brendan Allen win. Could have gone either way. I think with a coin flip like that, I'm not going to get up in arms and bitch. It wasn't a robbery. It was any man's fight at the end. Brendan Allen finished the fight stronger. I thought it was 2-2 going into the 5th round. I thought it was round 1 for Allen, round 4 for Allen, and then 2 and 3 for Chris Curtis. And I thought Brendan Allen, just by a smidge, because of how it finished, deserved the win. If Chris Curtis doesn't tear his hamstring, he probably wins his fight by a split decision. Crazy, right? Crazy. One moment, 1 centimeter, 1 second changes an entire fight and an entire career. For Brendan Allen, after the fight, he decides, yo, let me call out the man himself. Let me call out Dricus. I don't think he deserves Dricus next, especially not a split decision here. Granted, tough fight. Called out Sean Strickland. I don't think you're crazy for giving him a Sean Strickland fight, but I also don't think it's nuts if he has to fight Jack Hermanson. Because Jack Hermanson had way more of a clean win over Chris Curtis than Brendan Allen did. That's not a crazy idea. Nasruddin Imavov, I don't know, he might be booked right now, actually. But if not, maybe a fight like that. Allen defends his number 6 spot, but damn, he was given everything he could handle. I think Chris Curtis is just always a really hard stylistic matchup for Brendan Allen. But good back control and jiu-jitsu for him. ultimately that was the saving grace in this fight, and that's what got him the win. Not that he looked bad striking, he just didn't have the power. Chris Curtis still had more thud in the hands, and he had good moments. Chris Curtis should not be ashamed of himself. Losing in an absolute war against the number 6 guy in the world, Chris Curtis should definitely remain in the rankings, and I think some fun fights for Chris Curtis coming. And he took it on short notice. Chris Curtis is an absolute dog, and anybody saying he's washed is just not right. Anybody saying that he hasn't been looking good, no, he's a savage. Chris Curtis is a savage. He's still in the upper echelon, and he's still one of the most tough guys to deal with in the UFC middleweight division. Brendan Allen, though, defends that high-tier spot, maybe even a rebooking with Marvin Vettori in the future. But I'll tell you, certain guys in the top are like, okay, if I can stop the takedown and strike with him, I can make him pay. Chris Curtis, though, I just think stylistically, like the perfect, tricky matchup for Brendan Allen. Short guy, good takedown defense, legit power, and ready to go 5 hard. Brendan Allen edged him by a tad, and I do think it's a fair decision. So no robbery, in my personal opinion, in this main event. I know many people will be upset, especially betting the underdog Chris Curtis. I picked Chris Curtis. I thought he would win a hard-fought fight. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. When it was the 3rd round and he rocked him, when it was the 4th round and there was moments, I was like, no way, I'm going to perfect call this thing because I thought 3rd or 4th round. Instead, Allen wins a scrappy and competitive decision. And a lot of people were picking Brendan Allen to dust Chris Curtis. Absolutely not the case. I know in the 1st round it was scary because Allen got that back control and looked like he was working for the rear naked. Curtis gets back up. Curtis getting back up to his feet was awesome in this fight. His scrambles are incredible. His strength is off the charts. His technique to get out of back positions is crazy. And his takedown defense actually didn't look that great. He was getting taken down consistently by Allen, but his get-ups were on point. Brendan Allen, hard-fought win, and he, remains a top-tier contender. Sean Strickland rematch is not out of the question either. Sean Strickland also knocked out Brendan Allen the fight before the Chris Curtis fight. So maybe he runs it back with Sean Strickland. Interesting narrative. Training partner, obviously, Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland. And it would be rematches galore for Brendan Allen. We shall see what the UFC does. Nonetheless, Brendan Allen defends that 6th spot, and Chris Curtis gave him all he could deal with and is definitely a ranked contender. And on short notice, Chris Curtis deserves some extra money. This could have been fight of the night, but it wasn't. Fight of the night was the Mariscal fight. Performance of the night went to Bahamondes and César Almeida, getting those 50 G's on both sides. Now, as far as the picks, on paper, you're going to say, bro, record-wise, it didn't look good. But as far as high-confidence calls, right? Alex Morono lock, Charlie Campbell high confidence, Ignacio Bahamondes high confidence. Those were A tier. Chepe Mariscal as a dog was a good call. Really, even though Chris Curtis lost, it was a call. It was a quality call and an absolute scrap. Jermaine D. Randamie took an L. I was disappointed. She was doing damage on the feet, but it is what it is. So we're going to go through each one. Melissa Mullins, I picked her, but I told you, don't bet her at minus 350. Cornolle gets a win. Started off 0-1. Picked Budka over Almeida. He got stopped. I thought the wrestling would be better, but no. 0-2 to start the night. Had Matsumoto over Argueta, 1-2. Had Hugo over Falcao, 2-2. Obviously, Randamie lost. I was then 2-3. Got robbed in this one. Valter should have won, so then I ended up being 2-4. But really, come on. I should have been 3-3. And then Alex Morono, so then 3-4. I had him as the lock. He gets to win over McGee. So then 4-4 with Campbell over Peak as a most confident pick. Bahamondes over Giagos brings me to 5-4. Chepe Mariscal as a dog brings me to 6-4. And then I lose with Hernandez, and not the most confident call ever, 6-5. And then finishing out with the main event, lose on a split, just this much, the hamstring injury, then 6-6. Close fight, close night. I do feel like I was 7-5 if scorecards were just, personally. It is what it is. I don't think the robbery was the main event. I know Valter Walker wasn't impressive, but I thought he deserved the win. I thought Mariscal deserved the W at the end. I thought it was a coin flip that could have gone either way, I guess. So it could have been either guy's fight. I'm not going to say it was a robbery on either front. Same thing with the main event, not a robbery on either front. I do think Valter Walker deserved the win, though. That was UFC Vegas 90, and I'm hype as hell because I hit 30,000 subscribers. I hope you guys enjoyed this recap show. Make sure you all smash the likes. Daily content coming, so keep yourselves locked in. Subscribe with the post notifications turned on. Daily live streams as well, so you know I'm bringing the heat. 300 fight week's going to be lit. Full card predictions dropping tomorrow, April 7th, Sunday. So make sure you guys tune in. I appreciate each and every one of you watching. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.